History often celebrates kings as protectors and conquerors, but in the shadows of Eastern Europe, fear once ruled more powerfully than any army. In the mid-15th century, in a land called Wallachia, modern-day Romania, roads were not marked by signs, but by corpses. Travelers entering the region described a horrifying silence, broken only by the sight of thousands of human bodies slowly dying on sharpened wooden stakes. This was not chaos, this was policy, and at the center of it stood one man, Vlad III, known to history as Vlad the Impaler. Vlad was not born a monster. As a child, he was taken hostage by the Ottoman Empire, separated from his family, and forced to witness violence at an early age. While other children learned mercy, Vlad learned survival. Punishment, pain, and fear became normal to him. By the time he returned to Wallachia, the boy was gone, replaced by a ruler who believed that terror was the only language people truly understood. When Vlad claimed the throne, Wallachia was surrounded by enemies. The Ottomans threatened from the south, rival nobles plotted from within, and betrayal was common. Vlad responded not with diplomacy, but with absolute brutality. His most infamous punishment was impalement, a slow, agonizing execution where victims were placed on tall wooden stakes and left to die over hours or even days. Men, women, children, no one was spared. To Vlad, equality existed only in suffering. Entire forests of impaled bodies were erected along roads leading into his territory. These were not random acts of cruelty, they were psychological weapons. Enemy soldiers approaching Wallachia often turned back without fighting, terrified by what awaited them. Vlad understood something ancient rulers often forgot: fear travels faster than armies. But his cruelty was not reserved for invaders alone. Thieves, corrupt nobles, dishonest merchants all faced the same fate. Legends tell of a golden cup left in public fountains, untouched because no one dared steal under Vlad's rule. Crime vanished, not because people became good, but because punishment was worse than death itself. Foreign diplomats described Vlad's banquets where he dined calmly among the dying. While victims screamed and struggled on their stakes, Vlad ate in silence, believing that disorder deserved extermination. To him, mercy was weakness, and weakness invited invasion. As his reputation spread across Europe, stories of his cruelty grew darker with each retelling. German pamphlets depicted him as a demon in human form. These stories traveled centuries forward, eventually inspiring the fictional character of Dracula. But unlike myth, Vlad did not drink blood, he spilled it, deliberately and without regret. In the end, Vlad's reign was short. He was betrayed, overthrown, and killed in battle. His head was sent to the Ottoman Sultan as proof of death. But his legacy did not end there. Vlad the Impaler became a symbol, a warning of what happens when absolute power meets absolute fear. And as Europe moved forward, cruelty did not disappear, it evolved. In ancient Rome, a throne awaited another ruler, whose madness would burn a city to the ground.
Rome was a city of grandeur, a jewel of the ancient world. Yet beneath its shining marble facades and bustling markets, darkness waited in the heart of its ruler. In the 1st century AD, Nero Claudius Caesar ascended to the throne at a young age, a boy king shaped by the ambitions of those around him, yet possessed of a mind capable of cruelty the world would never forget. His reign began with promise, but as power settled upon him, his mind twisted, and the streets of Rome would become a theater of fear. Nero was obsessed with art, music, and personal glorification, but when he turned his gaze upon politics, he turned it into a weapon. Senators, perceived rivals, and even members of his own family were not spared. Poison, execution, and exile became commonplace, and Rome grew accustomed to whispered rumors of sudden disappearances. But it was the fire of Rome that would forever etch his name into infamy. In the year 64 AD, a great fire consumed much of the city. Homes, temples, and markets burned, and the citizens were thrown into chaos. Some claimed Nero himself had started the blaze, while others believed he merely watched as the flames danced through the night. According to legend, he stood upon a high tower, playing his lyre, indifferent to the agony below. Whether myth or reality, the image of Nero amid burning Rome became immortal, a portrait of a ruler enthralled by his own obsession while destruction reigned. The aftermath of the fire brought terror to those who survived. Nero sought to divert blame and scapegoat the Christians, a small religious sect already viewed with suspicion. Men, women, and children were arrested, tortured, and executed in horrifying ways. They were burned alive, nailed to crosses, or thrown to wild beasts in the arena, all for the amusement of a crowd and the political expediency of the emperor. Nero's Rome became a city where death was both entertainment and warning, and the screams of the innocent echoed across marble columns and cobblestone streets. But the cruelty of Nero extended far beyond the Christians. Political rivals were eliminated with a calculated precision that left Rome trembling. Advisors who displeased him vanished in the night, and senators were forced to live in constant paranoia. Even members of his own family, his mother, his stepbrother, and his wives were not safe. Their murders were executed with such cold detachment that they became stories whispered with horror for generations to come. Despite the chaos he created, Nero viewed himself as an artist and innovator. He rebuilt Rome according to his own extravagant designs, creating grand palaces and theaters while the populace suffered. Public spectacles were staged not merely for enjoyment, but for the display of his power. Gladiators fought, prisoners died, and the people watched, both fascinated and horrified. It was in these moments that the madness of Nero became undeniable, a ruler who saw suffering as an instrument of personal glory. Eventually, the senatorial class and the army grew weary of Nero's excesses. Betrayal and revolt erupted, forcing the emperor into a desperate flight. Surrounded, abandoned by his guards, Nero chose to end his own life, uttering only the words, "What an artist dies in me." His death marked the end of a reign that had been as brilliant as it was brutal, leaving a Rome scarred by fear, mistrust, and the echoes of cruelty. Today, historians study Nero not only as a tyrant, but as a cautionary tale of absolute power and unbridled obsession. The image of Rome ablaze, citizens tortured for survival, and a ruler indifferent to human life serves as a stark reminder that evil often wears the mask of civilization. Nero's legacy is one of destruction, madness, and a warning that power, unchecked and untempered by conscience, can turn even the greatest cities into prisons of terror. And as Rome struggled to recover, beyond its borders, another force was rising in the east, a conquerors whose hunger for blood would eclipse even the horrors of Nero. His name would strike fear into the hearts of nations and shape
In the
course
vast
of history
steppes of
itself.
Mongolia, a child was born into a world of hardship, betrayal, and survival. His name was Temujin, later known to history as Genghis Khan, and from his earliest days, life taught him that mercy was a luxury the weak could not afford. His father was poisoned when he was young, leaving Temujin and his family to fend for themselves in a harsh, unforgiving landscape. Hunger, cold, and constant attacks from rival tribes forged him into a man who understood power and fear as two sides of the same coin. By the time he reached adulthood, Temujin had united the scattered Mongol tribes not through diplomacy alone, but through an unyielding willingness to punish severely anyone who opposed him. Cities that resisted were erased from the map. Entire populations were massacred, and survivors were sent as warnings to neighboring settlements. His campaigns were swift, brutal, and calculated, a combination of strategy and terror that few armies could withstand. Villages were burned, food destroyed, and rivers choked with the dead. The Mongol warriors became both executioners and messengers of fear. One of Genghis Khan's most infamous tactics was psychological warfare. Before an invasion, he would spread rumors of mass killings, often exaggerating the scale to terrify cities into surrendering without a fight. And yet, when his threats were ignored, the reality was even more horrifying. Skulls were piled into towers, streets ran with blood, and the cries of the innocent echoed through the mountains. Men, women, and children alike were swept aside in the name of conquest. His philosophy was chillingly simple: resist and die, submit and live under his terms, often as slaves. Despite the horror, Genghis Khan was also a master of governance. Conquered peoples were incorporated into his empire, allowed to maintain their traditions, and sometimes elevated if they proved loyal. This paradoxical approach created an empire built on both fear and efficiency, enabling him to control a territory stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. But even his moments of governance were underpinned by the constant threat of violence. The shadow of his wrath loomed over every decision, every act of defiance met with unimaginable punishment. His personal life, too, reflected the harshness of his reign. Loyalty and betrayal defined the Mongol court as much as the battlefield did. Family members who opposed him faced exile or death, and even those who served him faithfully lived under the knowledge that one misstep could bring annihilation. Stories of his ruthlessness spread far beyond the steppes, reaching Europe, the Middle East, and China. Traders and travelers spoke of a man whose armies could wipe out entire civilizations with a single campaign, leaving devastation that took decades to heal. Yet, for all the bloodshed, Genghis Khan was not a mere madman. He understood logistics, communication, and the necessity of discipline. His armies moved with precision, striking before opponents could react, and his strategies are still studied in military schools today. What made him terrifying was not just his cruelty,
but the intelligence with which he wielded it. Every massacre, every skull tower, every scorched city served a purpose: to cement his dominance and send a message that defiance was death. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan had created one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. Millions had perished under his campaigns, and entire cultures had been reshaped by the force of his rule. Yet his legacy did not end in blood. His descendants expanded the empire further, and even today, nearly 8% of the world's population carries his genetic mark. The terrifying power of fear, combined with strategy and ambition, had left an indelible mark on history. The story of Genghis Khan serves as a chilling reminder that power untempered by compassion can become a weapon of unimaginable destruction. Cities, nations, and countless lives were sacrificed at the altar of his ambition. And as his empire stretched across continents, the world beyond watched in horror, knowing that cruelty could be both organized and unstoppable. From the frozen steppes of Mongolia to the bustling cities of the conquered, the name Genghis Khan became synonymous with terror, and his shadow would linger long after his death. And as the echoes of his conquests faded, a new darkness arose in Russia, a ruler whose paranoia and wrath would make even Genghis Khan's brutality seem personal, intimate, and terrifying in a different way.
In the vast and frozen lands of 16th century Russia, a young prince named Ivan grew up in a palace filled with fear, suspicion, and violence. His childhood was marked by neglect and brutality. His mother died when he was young, and his father's court was a dangerous place where betrayal was common and mercy was rare. These early experiences shaped Ivan into a man consumed by paranoia and a relentless desire for control. What he lacked in warmth, he compensated with ruthlessness, eventually becoming one of history's most feared rulers, Ivan IV, known to posterity as Ivan the Terrible. From the beginning of his reign, Ivan sought to centralize power in the hands of the Tsar, eliminating any rival who might threaten his authority. Nobles were not just challenged, they were hunted. The oprichniki, his personal secret police, enforced his will with terrifying efficiency. Towns were punished for the slightest hint of disloyalty, and entire populations were massacred to serve as warnings to others. Fear became as essential to governance as laws or armies, and the people of Russia learned that disobedience could mean boiling water, impalement, or execution in front of family and neighbors. One of the most infamous moments in Ivan's life was the killing of his own son. A moment of rage, born from jealousy and suspicion, resulted in the tragic death of the heir to the throne. This act, witnessed and whispered about for generations, symbolized the intimate cruelty that defined Ivan's rule. Power was personal, and so was punishment. Nothing and no one was safe, not even blood. Ivan's cruelty extended far beyond his own family. Rebels were executed publicly, their bodies displayed as warnings. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, and entire communities displaced, all under the banner of loyalty to the Tsar. Religion and superstition often intertwined with his paranoia, and anyone who spoke against him could be accused of heresy or treason, resulting in torture or death. The line between justice and vengeance blurred under his reign,
leaving a country in perpetual fear. Despite the darkness, Ivan was not a ruler without strategy. He expanded Russian territories, fortified cities, and established systems that would endure for centuries. Yet every success was overshadowed by the constant threat of violence, a world in which the people lived under the shadow of the Tsar's unpredictable wrath. Diplomats and foreign observers recorded stories of a ruler both brilliant and terrifying, capable of intellect and extreme savagery in equal measure. The psychological terror Ivan inflicted was profound. Citizens never knew whether a day would bring a decree of reward or a sentence of death. Nobles lived in constant vigilance, knowing that a single misstep could be fatal. Yet this terror created order, obedience, and a kind of twisted respect. Ivan understood that fear was as powerful a tool as any army, and he wielded it without hesitation. By the time of his death, Ivan the Terrible had transformed Russia. His rule had instilled a culture of obedience, centralized authority, and pervasive fear. Millions had suffered, but the Tsar had ensured that his legacy would endure, a reminder that power, when coupled with paranoia, can become more terrifying than armies, more lasting than laws, and more absolute than death. And as Russia trembled under his reign, the world was unaware that across continents another darkness would rise, a king Europe whose silent cruelty would kill millions without ever stepping onto a battlefield, and whose legacy would haunt the heart of Africa.
In the late 19th century, a European king looked across the ocean and saw opportunity in the heart of Africa. King Leopold II of Belgium, outwardly a diplomat and philanthropist, hid a darkness that would devastate millions. He claimed the Congo as his personal possession, a vast land rich in rubber, ivory, and untold resources. But his vision was built not on trade or civilization, but on terror. Villages were raided, families destroyed, and the cries of the innocent became part of the routine of administration. The infamous punishment of cutting off hands was not an isolated incident, it was systematic, intended to instill fear and obedience across the entire colony. Men, women, and children suffered, and resistance was met with immediate annihilation. Under Leopold's rule, nearly 10 million people perished, their deaths ignored by the world that remained fascinated by the king's wealth and pomp. Meanwhile, in 15th century Spain, another form of cruelty took shape under the guise of religion. Tomás de Torquemada, Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition, wielded spiritual authority like a weapon. The Inquisition sought to root out heresy, but its methods were nothing short of horrific. Victims were subjected to the iron chair, stretching devices, and live burnings. Confessions were extracted through pain and terror, and the courts operated under an absolute sense of righteousness. People were forced to betray family and friends, and any hint of defiance meant death. Torquemada's reign of terror was quieter than a battlefield massacre, but its psychological and spiritual effects were no less devastating. Fear permeated every town, every home, and every whisper could carry the weight of execution. The cruelty of Leopold and Torquemada, though separated by centuries and continents, shared a common thread: absolute power without conscience. In the Congo, silence replaced the cries of the innocent, while in Spain, obedience replaced free will. Both rulers understood that the mere threat of violence could
could control millions more effectively than armies or laws alone. They proved that cruelty could be industrial, calculated, and chillingly efficient. Where Genghis Khan and Ivan the Terrible had wielded fear as a weapon of conquest, Leopold and Torquemada wielded it to enforce ideology, greed, and total control. Yet even in these shadows, history remembers. Reports of the atrocities, smuggled letters, and survivor accounts eventually exposed the horrors to the world. Leopold faced international outrage, and the Congo was eventually freed from his personal grip. Torquemada's Inquisition ended, leaving behind a legacy of fear and cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked religious authority. The death toll could never be fully accounted for, but the impact on human history was permanent. Their stories remind us that power unrestrained can corrupt absolutely, and that cruelty can take many forms, from the open battlefield to the halls of faith, from public spectacle to the silent terror of forced labor. As the camera pans across the lands scarred by their actions, the forests of the Congo and the streets of medieval Spanish cities bear witness to the consequences of human cruelty. Millions of lives were extinguished, yet the echoes of their suffering persist in memory, art, and historical record. These men did not die quietly. Their legacies of fear continue to teach a singular lesson. Power without morality is not just dangerous, it is lethal. And so concludes our journey through history's darkest corridors. From the blood-stained roads of Wallachia to the burning streets of Rome, from the frozen steppes of Mongolia to the terror-filled courts of Russia, and finally to the silent forests of Africa and the chambers of the Spanish Inquisition, one truth becomes undeniable. Humanity has known rulers whose cruelty surpassed imagination, whose punishments shaped nations, and whose legacies still haunt our collective memory. These are not stories of heroism, nor of glory. They are warnings etched in blood, reminders that the human capacity for power and fear is boundless. History remembers them not as kings, emperors, or conquerors, but as lessons, dark and unyielding, for all who dare to follow in their footsteps. History will always remember the crowns, the thrones, and the conquests, but it is the cries of the victims, the forests of the fallen, and the shadows of terror that endure. Power, unchecked and unrestrained, can transform even the greatest civilizations into theaters of horror. And as long as humanity seeks dominion without conscience, the lessons of Vlad, Nero, Genghis Khan, Ivan, Leopold, and Torquemada will remain eternal, chilling reminders that cruelty, in any form, leaves a scar on the world that time can never erase.